Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we've got a very special guest. Her name is Keisha Reynolds, and she's a certified clinical hypnotherapist and a certified hair loss specialist and a life coach based out of Philadelphia. She's a leading advocate for body-focused repetitive behaviors. She blends expertise with a lived experience to bring awareness to these often misunderstood OCD-related conditions. Keisha, I don't need to go any further than that. That's a great slice of repertoire there, and welcome to the show. So glad you could join us.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, as we get started, I always like to introduce a guest by sharing sort of their genesis story. Like, how did you've taken off a pretty big slice of credentials there, a hypnotherapist, a certified hair loss specialist, and a life coach. What brought you to all these amazing places?
Well, they actually all kind of lead into one, actually.
Okay.
So I started out in hypnotherapy. I've always had a love for mental health, and this is my way of being able to do that. I am continuing on with my academic journey to become a clinical PsyD for a clinical psychologist. So I am continuing on my academic journey with that. But I did along the way, I did stop and I did get my certification, which was a 2-year program at a lovely school called HMI, which stands for Hypnosis Motivational Institute out of Tarzana, California. And
Right.
at the end of the 2 years, you graduate with a clinical hypnotherapy certification. But where that ties in to the hair loss is because I experienced firsthand a body focused repetitive behavior called trichotillomania. There are a few, but that is one that is associated with the BFRB. It is a BFRB. And what that consists of is one pulling their hair out, and typically
Wow.
you pull it out, like by the root. It's a sensory thing. It's very similar to OCD, but does
Wow.
have some differences. OCD, usually people are aware of when they are doing things. They usually do it because they feel that there is a reason. Like if they don't wash their hands, they're going to get sick. If they wash their hands, you're going to get too many germs, things of that sort. Body
So it's
focus.
not like it itches or I've got to get this thing out of me. It's just kind of
Well, it depends. So with
okay.
me, it was also because I also typically when you have one body focused repetitive behavior, it is not uncommon for it to morph or develop into another. So another very common one, which was someone that I suffered with, is dermatillomania, which basically that is the skin picking or taking off scabs and digging and picking and things of that sort. And the
And I'm
way that
assuming you weren't a tweaker. You were. This had nothing to do with crystal
N-
meth.
no. This stemmed for me with. It started out with pervasive nail biting when I was 6. I was
Wow.
unfortunately I was in a situation where I was unmercifully bullied as a 6-year-old by kids that were
Oh,
much older than me,
wow.
and at the time. The term body focused repetitive behaviors had not been coined yet. That didn't come along until Christina Pearson named that in the 90s. Okay.
Okay.
So when I was going through this at first with the nail biting was when I was about 6. We're talking early 80s here. I know I'm
Okay.
dating myself, but
Oh,
we're
it's
talking
okay. I'm right there.
talking early 80s. So by the time we got into the 90s, when there was a term coined for it, I still wasn't exactly sure what it was. Is at that time I was a teenager, but it went from the nail biting into the hair pulling. Okay.
Okay.
Now, these repetitive behaviors are typically lifelong once you get them. Okay. Now, what I use hypnotherapy as a way to significantly to reduce the urges. Okay. So you will sometimes go in and out of remission. You'll go out of it where you won't be picking anymore, but then something could happen that may cause you to pick again. And unlike OCD, body focused repetitive behaviors are more sensory. So it could stem from anxiety. It could stem from as simple as being bored and, watching television, but it is a self-soothing uh, uh, behavior that one takes on in order to be able to release anxiety or anything else that they may be going through at that time.
So I'm just trying to understand this. We have so many different guests that have so many different specialties and expertises and slices of ailments and illnesses, and I try to get in and understand this, and this is really pretty new to me. I mean, I've known plenty of people that have bit their nails, and most of the people I've ever known that picked themselves had other problems that had nothing to do with this. But the hair pulling, I've heard of. When you mentioned it, it was like, oh yeah, I have heard of something like that, but I just didn't never understood it. I never immersed myself in it. Or I never certainly knew anybody that suffered from it. So when you're going through this, I can understand a trigger. I can understand, the reasons that can cause a behavior, whether it's a combination of things. In your case, it seems that it was a combination of trauma and a condition that you already were dealing with. Um, but when you're doing it, does it give you a reward in the sense?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. So I believe, okay, that it is the same. It's almost like I believe it probably releases the same endorphins that somebody would get if they were, say, for example, an addict.
oh, okay,
Okay.
that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking. But
yeah, yeah. It very, very much so. And what ends up happening actually is when it happens, you kind of go into almost like a trance-like, if you
okay,
will. Okay. So it is not very, very easy, to stop. Okay. It kind of something, it just kind of takes over, and you just, you continue, to pull, or pick. For me, it was the feeling of something on my scalp, like a pimple or something.
okay,
And then for someone with a body focused repetitive behavior, that that's all you need to start picking at that pimple, or
sure,
if there's a scab over it, picking at that scab and re-picking it, and then uh, pulling, while you're doing that. And so then, of course, while at that time you're getting this temporary release, because that's what it is, you are actually damaging your hair follicle.
oh yeah,
Okay, you're
I can't imagine
damaging
that being good for you.
you're damaging the hair follicle, and you have, on top of that, you have already now picked a either dime, nickel, or quarter size, spot, in your
Wow,
head, um, so it's one of those things where you know that it is going on, but for many people, they are powerless to stop it, and you will have people that will say, okay, well, why don't you just like stop?
right,
It's not as
just don't do
easy.
it. Yeah,
There is not as easy as just stopping. And the reason why is because these are neurological behaviors, okay, that are rooted in the brain's reward and sensory processing systems. Okay. So it's not as easy as just saying, okay, well, I could just, get over it.
right,
It's deeper than that, because if we could, we would.
right,
Nobody
right.
wants to do this. And then on top of that, it becomes a cycle. So typically you do the act in and of itself, and then you survey the damage by looking in the mirror. You survey the damage that has been done. And then now you go through the guilt and the shame piece of it, if you're trying to now hide it or cover it up, because things like this are done, in private. This isn't something that is done in person where everybody can see. This is something
Right.
that you want to keep secret, like a dirty little secret, if you will. And then the cycle starts over again. So it's like, okay, you'll make the decision, okay, I'm not going to pull anymore. I have to be stronger. And again, this also hurts the person because then they feel that they don't have willpower. Okay, but
Right.
this goes deeper than willpower. Okay, this is a real disorder. Okay, and you need real help with it. Unfortunately, there isn't anything in terms of medication wise that can help with this. Okay. So people use a lot of different things. Some people use cognitive behavioral therapy, HRT, which is habit reversal training therapy, mind body relaxation, stimulus control tools, compassion practices. I typically end up with doing with the hypnotherapy and anchoring techniques. So an anchoring technique would be something that I add into the hypnotic script. For example, I may bring awareness. So for someone who has a body focused repetitive behavior, and so that if you're not aware of it, I make it so that that person is aware of their action, but then giving them something else to do with their hands to give a better choice. Or something like, whenever you feel the urge to pick, what you are really feeling is that urge to study. And I'm just saying that as an example because I'm also a student. You see what I'm saying? So it's relative to me. So when I then feel that urge to pick, for me, now that then translates to, okay, I think I want to study. Do you see how then you can kind of replace one thing with something else that is a little bit more positive? Okay. And that is known as an anchoring technique, or something like, whenever you feel the urge to pick, you immediately bring your forefinger and your thumb together and you press them and hold them for 2 seconds and then release. And immediately you feel calm and you no longer have that urge that you want to pick. At that point, I'm building in bringing your forefinger to your thumb to be able to release that. So a number of different things can be used for anchoring techniques. Usually during my first session with a client, I ask questions in terms of, what was their perfect scenery? What's the perfect scenery for them? What are things that make them feel calm? And I do that because when I then build an anchoring techniques, I use whatever that individual has said and create an anchoring technique out of what they've said. People tend to receive and take in things that they've already said that are known to them way more than they would, I think, than somebody else. So I like to incorporate many of the things that I put into the script. They may be a script that I've created for them, but a lot of it has words and things that they have already said to me. And then I just implement those words into the script and then repeat it back to them.
Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters, and for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you. Well, that makes sense. So it seems like you treat this very similar to how you might treat an addiction, but it seems that it would be much more difficult because an addiction, whatever you're addicted to, you have to go out and get and prepare. And there's a whole process that you have to go and do, whether it's a drug or food or whatever.
Right.
You got to go and do a thing.
Right. You got to seek it out.
You don't have to do anything, and you can do it mindlessly. And on next thing like nobody thinks about when you're scratching your head or your face or whatever. I could imagine it being like that, where you're just not even aware that you're doing it.
Yeah, and usually it takes place, somewhere that is you consider to be private. Like I said,
Right.
for me, it was, in my bedroom.
Mhm.
When I'm at, late night when I'm by myself, reading a book or whatever it may be, watching TV or whatever I'm looking at. For me, it could be something, like that. So what I did also was I also, much how somebody would do if they do have an addiction, I had to also change my scenery.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So for me, and again, this worked for me, I would leave the bedroom and then start sitting in another part of
Okay.
my home. Okay. So now the scenery is different. Now I'm out, in the living room and I'm out to
Right.
where, everyone,
Put
I'm
yourself around
visible.
people, so you're not going
Right.
to do
So
it.
now,
Yeah.
right. So now I'm not going to do
That
it.
makes sense.
So doing things like that, and it didn't necessarily wasn't indicative to a specific time.
Okay.
It could have been during the day at 2 o'clock. It could have been any time that whenever I had that urge. Okay, but changing my scenery. And for me, okay, one of the things that I have brought into my life, and I don't know what your, in terms of your audience, I don't know in terms of where they are faith wise, but for me, I'm a believer. So
We
for
have a
me,
lot of, it's a pretty wide ranging audience, but we have a lot of believers, and I'm one of
okay,
them.
okay. So what I do is I lean into prayer.
Yes.
Okay. I lean into, I don't know scripture well, but thank God for ChatGPT and
There you
Google
go.
because I am able to find a scripture that I want. Okay. And I'm
Nice.
able to read that and decree and declare on that scripture. Okay.
Nice.
And be prayerful, and doing that also when I create for me personally, because I do create my own hypnotic scripts, even for myself. For
Mhm.
me, I do create faith-based hypnotic scripts. Now, not
Nice.
everybody may want that. Some people, and if you don't, that's fine.
Sure,
But
sure.
for me, I do. I believe in getting scripture and
Hmm.
bringing in prayer, and
Okay.
actually, the scriptures become the hypnotic suggestions. Okay,
Beautiful.
and being able to say that, and then what happens is when I'm with a client, when they are telling me initially what they are going through, that's not the part that I record. When I start to do the actual script and the detailed imagery and going into it, the induction and all of that, that's the piece of it that I record. So then what I do is I then send that recording, which is about anywhere from 20 minutes to 25 minutes long. I will then send that recording to the client and they will listen to that nightly, or if they can't nightly, at least maybe 4 to 5 nights out the week, or first thing in the morning when they get up. So what happens is by listening that in between the time that we have our one-on-one sessions on Zoom,
Mhm.
that doubles down everything that we have been talking about.
Nice.
Okay. And it really allows it to get in there, even if you happen to fall asleep on it. Because remember, beta is where we are now.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Then after that, you have, I believe it is theta is no, that's underneath. So you have beta, and you may have to help me with this if you know. I'm kind of blanking on it. Do it before I got on here. All of a sudden now it's a blank, but I know it's
Yeah.
beta and then alpha. I'm sorry, alpha is next. And then
Yeah.
you have
Alpha,
theta and then
beta, and
delta
then delta. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then delta. So delta is typically our sleep. Okay. However, when you are in hypnosis and you are in between that sleep and awake, right
Hmm.
in that section right there. That I believe is when you are in that theta state of
Okay.
mind. Okay.
That
And
blissful
it
state.
that
Yeah.
that yeah, then that you're right in between sleep and awake. And
Float
typically that's
away.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's typically how hypnosis makes you feel. It kind of makes you kind of go in and out. You're
Okay.
in between like that, sleep and awake feeling. Okay.
Hmm.
But you are still very much aware of what's
Right.
going on.
Right.
And that's typically that gets then into your subconscious. Okay.
Mhm.
So even if you do happen to fall asleep, I hope that you don't, but I've been told I have a relaxing voice. So if someone does go to sleep, it's still getting in there. It's
Got
still
it.
playing into the data state as well, And alpha, that's more of when you are very creative. That wakes up that creative state when alpha.
All
That's
right.
when some changes and things like that are able to take place. So for me, I lean into all of that. And you asked before about the different certifications. So the hair loss specialist was something that I added. And I added that because when you are going through something like a body focused repetitive behavior, and the one thing that bothers you is the hair loss because you pulled for trichotillomania,
Right.
that hair is able to grow back.
Got it.
Okay. So I'm able to be able to take a look at that through a scope and get a look at your hair follicles, see in terms of what stage are they in. Is it the anagen phase, the telogen phase, to see which phase that the hair is in, and then be able to prescribe at that point supplements. Okay.
Okay.
And that then helps with the hair to be growth. Now, obviously, hair does not grow back overnight, but
Right.
it does something for the self-esteem and for
Oh
you as
yeah.
a person to know that, okay, what I've done can also be remedied.
Now,
Okay.
with the hair loss that you treat, is it typically or exclusively due to the repetitive body focused repetitive
No,
behaviors,
no,
or it could be anything?
it could be anything.
Okay.
And not everyone is able to, hair is not able to grow back. Some people
Sure.
it's not, but for those that it does, it's not just for this. I brought this in as a way for me because I came from that experience. Okay.
Right.
So I thought this would be something as really, really good to be able to add to really help people. But it is not just for people who go through and deal with trichotillomania, female pattern hair loss, okay, DHT, okay, which is the hormone that as we get older, especially women, especially when you kind of get into menopause, you are
Mhm.
not making as much estrogen, you're making more testosterone. So
Right.
DHT, that then comes out and that it messes with the hair follicles and prohibits the hair to grow full. So that's
Got it.
why sometimes you will see people where they may have hair around the sides and around the back of the head, and maybe even the very front, but the crown may be very, very thin. Okay.
Right.
Or with women, as they get older, when they part the part gets wider and wider and
Okay.
wider. That's where that kind of comes into play.
Got it. Wow. Wow. So I imagine, and I always like to get a story, this sounds like a really profound work that you're doing, and I imagine you've helped a lot of people in a profound way, especially yourself. But there's generally a story or two that stick out as somebody that you just really made an impact on that touched you. Would you like to share a story?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I actually mentioned this on another podcast, and I mention all the time because it's very near and dear to my heart. There was a woman I was working with, and she had a couple of things that were going on. She had the trichotillomania, okay, but on top of that, she happened to be in a very difficult relationship with someone who had very high traits of narcissism. So she was really, really in a hard situation, and the relationship itself exacerbated, the hair pulling, okay, that she was going through.
Mhm.
So she was isolated, because of the relationship, she was isolated. She wasn't in a position where she was able to have the financial means to be able to move out and do what she needed to do, mainly because the partner she was with was manipulative, would gaslight her, make her think that she didn't have a chance to be able to get anything more because she was a nobody. That's pretty much
Yeah.
what he said. So in this, I worked with her and I combined the coaching, aspect of it. And I use what coaches typically use is the GROW model. Okay. So GROW stands for goal. R is for you grow is for your reality. O is for like where options are out there, and W is for your way forward or how you're
Okay.
going to proceed. So when I started working with her, I actually first asked her questions based on that model. Okay, what would your goal? What does that look like if you didn't have to deal with this type of behavior, this toxicity in your life? What would that look like? And it was so much, she wasn't able to even really put it into terms at that point. So I made it a little simpler. I said, so imagine that you have gone on vacation with your friends,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and or with family. I said, and this person is not there with you, and you're just there either by yourself or with your friends and family. What's the goal there? Like, what would that look like? And
Right.
just even saying that, to imagine that, her face lit up, that
Wow.
she wasn't around that person, because even just that allowed her to feel free.
Right.
So, what we did was I put together a plan for her. And with the coaching, we looked at, okay, her goal, okay, kind of where she wanted to go, okay, where she is now, and what options. So when we got to the options piece of it, she indicated that there was another position that she wanted to get a
Okay.
promotion for. I said she met the criteria for being the time met. Usually, you have to be in a position for a certain length of time before you can post out into another position in the
Right.
workforce. Okay. She had been in the role for quite some time, so she had the time. But because of the put down and feeling so devalued, okay, and that she wasn't able to do anything right, this is what she was getting from her partner, okay, she doubted herself if she would be a good fit for this position. So I worked with her. Okay.
Okay.
My background prior to coming into hypnotherapy, I was a recruiter for about 25 years. So HR is my background.
All
So,
right.
so this was right in line with me in terms of knowing what to do with this, because I've been a recruiter and have been placing candidates with positions for such a long time. So for me, I worked with her. I helped her in terms of doing um, um, rewriting her resume, and encouraged her to have a conversation with the hiring manager of that particular job that she wanted to go for. And
Okay.
in doing so, he allowed her to then be able to saw where she was strong with certain things, and then allowed her to pair with a peer at her job, a peer coach, to be able to help her become stronger in the other things she needed to do in order to be a success in that role. And
Wow.
in 4 months, she was able to apply and did get the position. And I was very
Nice.
happy for her. So, with that, brought now a sense of confidence, okay, and a confidence of seeing this is something that I did. So now we have now completely destroyed the distortion, okay, that she can't do it. That's
Got it.
now been
Yeah,
dispelled.
yeah, yeah. The
Okay,
narcissist lost his power.
that's gone.
You
Okay.
ever see that movie Labyrinth?
No,
Bowie and the
no,
Muppets? It's a great
no.
movie. It's a little cult movie. Anyways, it's a story about this goblin king who runs this whole world and this girl who finds her way into it. At the very end of it, it's you have no power over me. That was
Mm,
and just broke the spell. And it seems like that's kind of like what you did is you got
yeah.
to just break that spell. You don't have any power anymore.
Yes, and in getting that and getting that position, that really made a big difference. I then encouraged her to take
Nice.
baby steps, start
Yeah.
back with getting in contact with friends. Okay, getting your support system back, because one of the things that being in those type of toxic relationships does is they do isolate you and
Right.
divide you from friends and family and
Mhm.
people who care about you. Okay, so
Right.
she felt very alone. So slowly but surely, she was able to join clubs even at work.
Nice.
Okay. And then within about another few months after that, was able to then move out because she was able to then kind of return home to
I
her
love
mom's
it.
house and stay until she was able to then move back out into her own place again. So
Wow.
that was just like, and I don't work with her anymore,
Right.
but she is somebody who was very it was a client was very near and dear to my heart, and
Oh, yeah.
I still check in with her to this day.
You have to feel proud about that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, as
Yeah.
I suspected, we got into all this stuff. We didn't even
Yeah.
scratch the surface. We didn't get into your drink that, eats this, travels, and
Right.
your life
Yes.
coaching. But I
Yes.
would love to invite you back to continue this conversation. Um, but I'd like to always give you an opportunity to kind of circle back around and leave our listeners with sort of a parting thought. What would you do with that?
Absolutely. Well, I will say this: just know, wherever you are, whoever you are, you don't deserve to be treated less than. Okay. Many times when you think you are alone, you're really not. There are more people going through what you are going through than you think. Okay. Do not isolate yourself. That is the worst thing you can do. Okay. Talk to someone, tell someone. If you are in a relationship where you are with someone who is an abuser, then you do have to tread lightly with that. But find other resources in a sense of, if you are out, being able to form a group, okay, group of people or friends who may be going through the same thing. And even if they're not, even if it's at your job, getting involved in different peer groups and things of that, even at your job. Many times, if you are in an abusive relationship, trying to go out with friends is not an option because you are prohibited from doing so. So, whatever you have to do while you are already out of the home. Okay. So doing things at work, making friendships, talking to a manager or a supervisor or a director who you trust, letting them know that there's things are going on and if something happens, what to do, creating safe little small spaces like that for yourself. And if you are a believer, prayer.
Yes.
Please do it. Please do it. Please do it. God has not forgotten you. In
No.
fact, He wants to hear from you. He wants to
It's
hear
usually
from you.
where you can get the most closer, the closer to God is when you're in your difficult time.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
100%. Wow.
Absolutely.
Well, I know that you're based out of Philadelphia, but do you do only in-person work or do you do
No,
remote work?
I do. I work remotely majority of the time. I work remotely. But for those that are in the Philadelphia area that would like to meet in person, I will do that. But I typically work a Zoom platform,
Got it.
and if that doesn't work, then, there's WhatsApp or, any other,
Sure.
platforms out there, but I work remotely.
Well, based on that, if any of our listeners wants to reach out to you or get a hold of you or learn more, how would they do that?
Well, you can do this a couple of different ways. You can reach me on my website, which is www.321deepsleep.com. And 321 is just the numbers 321. It's not
Okay.
spelling out the word for three, two, and one. It's just the numbers
Yeah.
321deepsleep.com. And my email address is my first name, Keisha, which is Kisha at 321deepsleep.com. And then I have another email address, which is a Gmail address. It's 321 Deep Sleep Hypnotherapy at gmail.com. So those are three different ways to be able to get in contact with me. Give me about maybe a day to be able to get right back to you if you leave the information, but I will respond and be able to kind of set up something that we can talk. And anybody listening on your show, if they, let me know, like in the beginning, that they heard from me on your show, I
Oh,
will give 10% off of the 10,
wonderful.
50% off of the package.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I appreciate you joining me. And again, I hope you take me up on my offer to
Oh,
continue
I
the
will.
conversation. We've got a lot more to talk about. And I didn't ask a bunch of questions I wanted to because you were on a good roll, and I didn't want to derail you. So I look forward to that. But most importantly, I'm just grateful that you came out here and shared your experience with everybody. And I just want to thank you for being part of the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I absolutely appreciate it. And I will be back. I will be back.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, this has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I want to thank all of our listeners for making this show possible, and we will see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.